Welcome back to another video. Bitwig Studio 4.1 is actually currently in the beta phase. You can download it now when you have a running license. And they added a lot of new NodeFX devices, and I want to show you in this video what they are and how they work and some practical approaches. And this one is basically everything I learned, or this video is everything I learned in the yesterday's stream, and I try to compress it a bit down to a smaller video. It's still quite long, but I think it's quite enjoyable. So let's start. The first addition to the NodeFX devices is the device called Dribble, or how I would call it, bounce. So it starts to launch a kind of a ball from up in the air, and then it bounces back from the ground, and you can change the friction in the air. So it slows down the bouncing. So all you need to do is to add here some kind of synthesizer after the NodeFX device, of course. And then you need an input, which is a note. Here in the piano roll, it's C3. Then you can hit play. And then you get a You can change it damping, so we remove the friction. And you can see when the note starts here, or the note start or the note on, re-triggers the effect. It's also not a polyphonic effect, so when you input multiple notes, it basically adds the same bouncing effect to all of the notes. And there's also no way to add polyphonic modulations to different notes, at least not at the moment. Or you can start lower here. And maybe this effect is too random because it's slowing down. It's not synchronized to the beat or to your BPM setting here in the transport section, but you can quantize this here with the new addition of the quantize device. Looks like this. And you can say quantize every output of this one to a 16th note grid. And this is something I do a lot in the grid itself with the clock quantize modules. And this sounds much more musically. This is without. And this is with quantize. And you can basically dial in your kind of a forgiveness, which is hard to describe, but it's like if you have it at 0%, then it's completely straight quantized to the grid. But when you dial in forgiveness, then it's a bit sloppy around the edges. So it's not exactly on the grid. So you can still preserve some kind of groove or some non-linear speed change to the rhythm. And you can see you can also include the note off. So when you have a note on and then you have a note length and then at some point you have a note off, you can decide if you want to quantize the note offs as well or the note ons or only the note on. So you can decide if you want to include this here. So sometimes this can be handy and sometimes it's not so useful. So you have to try out what's best for you or for the groove or for your melody or for your pattern you input into the quantizer here. But as you can see, the triple here itself creates some non-linear rhythms. And with the quantized, the second addition to the Node FX devices, we can kind of make it more musical or more useful in some song structures where you have like more like a straight rhythm. You can also go here down to milliseconds, so it's not really quantized to anything, or at least the starting, the first bounce where it starts, right? So you can say start at 100 milliseconds. Another addition to the FX devices is this device called Ricochet, and I hope I pronounced this right. And it also launches some kind of balls to the corners or to the walls of this room. And you can influence the room size here, how many corners you want, the rotation, the spatialization, and also the friction, how fast you want to launch the balls. And if you can switch it to different launching modes. So random is just launching balls at random, or bar sync here. So every time we have here a node in the node clip, you launch a ball for each node, and then you can influence here the room settings, and then it changes the behavior. And also every time the ball bounces back from these walls, you generate a node. And this sounds kind of random, and it is, but it's also kind of a bit predictable, because you know what happened to these balls. Okay, maybe paint in here more notes. Like this. And you can also go here full speed. So this sounds kind of random, and sometimes this is exactly what you want, because you probably want to create some textures, some ambient drones here and there. And you can do that with this device on a node basis, which is interesting, because you can also add different other Bitwig FX devices, Node FX devices, to influence this even more. So you can say, well, this sounds rhythmically too random. So we can introduce here again a quantize device, and can say everything that comes out of the Ricochet, synchronize it to 16 node beat grid, and then we get a much more rhythmically synchronized or usable result. So just having here these notes painted in super straight, super simple, using this device here, bringing in randomness, and then using the quantize to synchronize everything to the beat grid, makes it super interesting for me, because you can introduce or make a lot of experiments in front of this quantized device, create a big mess basically, and then say, please quantize, sort everything out for me, bring order to the chaos. And then we can use it in a song context or in a track context, where we need more like straight notes and straight rhythms. You can also dial in your forgiveness. I think I also explained this a bit. So you can make the rhythm or the quantization a bit more sloppy, so you preserve some of the randomness, some of the wonky flavor of this Ricochet output here. Okay, so let's start over, and maybe I try to make some kind of practical example. So we have here a lot of notes in the scale of D sharp minor. It's triggering this Ricochet here, and now we use a Polysynth. And let's trigger this one. something like this. Maybe reduce the friction, so we get a kind of drony feel. Decrease the speed, initial speed. Or increase the speed. It's even like a kind of a pad. Okay, so now add some randomization, which is also another new addition to the NoteFX devices. With this one, we can introduce randomized pitch, velocity, timbre, pressure, pan, gain for each note that's been generated by this device here. So this could be interesting, because when we use here timbre or timbre and pressure, we can use the expression and modulate maybe the cutoff frequency here with the timbre, and the pressure is changing the oscillator mix. Okay, so now we increase the pitch maybe to around 0.20, just to get some small variation there. More velocity randomization. This is the cutoff. Timbre is modulating the cutoff. Pressure is modulating the mix, oscillator mix. And the panning. Nice. Then we can introduce here humanize. And humanize has a chance slider, which reduces, when you pull it down to 0%, reduces the chance of the notes being played. So sometimes you want to have like a sound that's not so, has not so many notes, or it's not that expressive. For instance, in the intro, you want to have probably less notes. So you want to only let some of the notes through, and not all of them. So you can use this as a kind of an expression slider, I would say, in this setup here. Maybe introduce some humanization to the timing and the velocity here. Maybe increase the voices. So this is still beta version here, right? So we have some crackles in the sound here. It's probably fixed in the release version, but now I have some major issues here also with the audio engine crashing on Windows. But I want to make this this tutorial nonetheless, because I think the devices are pretty great and a nice addition to Bitwig, and I really love them. And yeah, so we have this humanization here, introducing some randomization to timing and a chance. And now we can say, let's quantize this a bit to the beat grid, and we have this forgiveness slider here also. So you can morph between having no quantization at all and straight quantize to the grid. So you can morph between the two fluidly, which is interesting. Right, so you can start in the intro maybe with totally chaotic behavior of all the sounds, and then slowly morph into a more rhythmic feel than in the main part. This is something I want to explore. And yeah, this slider is pretty great actually. So yeah, we have these two now, and what we can do also is introduce here a band device, which is also new. And this band device is basically giving you the option to bend from a different pitch than the current pitch of the note is. So when the pitch is C3, for instance, and you dial in here +1, then it bends down from C sharp down to C, just one semitone, right? And you can also change the slope of it. And the bend is so fast, you can even create kick drums with it. So you don't need to modulate in here the pitch. If you want to create kick drums, you can do this with the bend. And also, I think in the stream, I tried to create some kind of 808 bass drums, and you can move between the bass itself without an attack or pitch modulation attack and a kick drum. So you can morph between the two just with the band here. You can also define here in milliseconds how long the band is. So it's pretty fast, it goes down to 10 milliseconds. So this is the band device. Another new device is called note repeats. Looks like this. And what it does, it just repeats the notes, but you can influence this also with modulation. Not only modulation, also automation. So let's paint in here one note. And maybe use a sampler for this. Let's use a kick drum, I don't know. Should be nice. Something like this. And now it repeats just this one note here. And you can change the speed. Or can switch the repeats off. So you can just use your automation. And you can hear it, it goes even to pretty high rates. Something like this. You can also switch it to Euclidean mode. Right, so you have this pattern and you have still this speed up or multiplication option here. And it's also synchronizable to the grid. And you can also use the quantize here at the end if you want to. So we have here still 16 notes, and this sounds like this. So it's perfect for drums, for percussions, for hi-hats. You can play around with this and in combination with quantize forever. And you can create so many interesting rhythms just with these two devices. It's mind-boggling how great this is. You don't need to paint in here a lot of notes and offsets and, you know, edit it. You just paint in one note and then you go to the device chain here, add these note repeats device and quantize device, add some modulation to it, and that's it. And you have so many possibilities just with this. I see a lot of people complaining about the piano roll, that they want to have new features in the piano roll. But the piano roll is not that interesting in Bitwig, or at least in the Bitwig universe. You paint in here a pretty basic pattern, and then you make it interesting by adding devices and modifying these notes inside the device chain. And it's so easy to do that in Bitwig than in all the other DAWs where you have to go into the piano roll, you know, and then you use a tool for some random chord progression, some random rhythmic pattern and sequencing stuff. You don't need to do that in Bitwig. In Bitwig, the note clips are super simple. You paint in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 notes, and then you add in all the variation inside the device chain with these modifiers. Okay, so let's create some interesting percussion. So I'm searching here in my sample library for some random bongo files, right? And we probably need here a drum machine. And we can drag here all these samples into the drum machine. So we have a cell, or each cell has a sampler with a sample in it. And what we can do now is we can paint here a note clip and then paint in here notes for all the samples. Maybe do it a bit longer. Something like this. And they just trigger once. So this is the normal default behavior. And we can go now into each cell here and add maybe a note repeat. And switch it to burst or Euclidean mode here. Let's see. Change the density of this one. And then drag it over to this cell here. Change the density. Drag it over to this cell. Change the density. Drag it over here. Right, so you can see you can create easy nice little grooves. It's over here and there. You can also rotate this a bit here, maybe. Let's see. Here we go. Change the speed. Maybe also add your quantizer. 16 notes, forgiveness, just a bit. Okay, so you can create easy rhythms here with the drum machine and just these simple notes here, just painting in notes, long notes for each of these cells. And of course, you can go in here and use then humanize a thing, change the chance here a bit, the timing, the velocity, right? And copy this over to each cell, which is a bit cumbersome, but you can do it first and then, you know, clone it to each cell. Maybe over here. Doesn't need to be everywhere, but oh, it's already everywhere. Okay, so now we have this image. So right, you can create interesting rhythms just with this. Okay, that's one way of using the Euclidean note repeater. So something I showed already yesterday in the stream is that the sampler now has a release box here. And what this means is when you have a sample in the sampler here and you play the sample, everything that's in that release box here gets triggered when the gate is off. So we can put here another sample in this one, in this box. So a sampler inside the sampler. So every time this one is done playing, this one starts. Oh, it's the, you can see it's the gate. So this is the first sample and the second sample starts here. So you can combine multiple samples. You can also do this here kind of inception way. I did this also yesterday in stream. Also new is you can now change here the color palettes. Usually you select the color here for the track and the clips here on the left side. Now you have this the small arrow here. You can change different palettes if you want to. And you can also use your own images. You can drag in here just one image, a JPEG here, for instance, drag it over here. And then it says import as palette, and then it creates this new palette you can select then over here. Okay, so here I've prepared something. It's a simple note clip. We have here 3 notes. And these nodes are going into this device chain here. So first up, I'm creating multiple nodes from these one nodes here. So when the D sharp goes into this device here, I'm creating multiple nodes. So the root node, which is D sharp, so it stays the same note. Then I get here plus 15, which is the minor third. Then the perfect fifth here, then an octave lower for the bass note, and then here 5 semitones up. And I also dialed in here a chance of 50% being played of this note. So I already created here a chord from this. So sometimes when I play different notes here on the piano roll, not every chord in this key is a minor chord. So sometimes there's it's a major chord, right? So the key filter sorts this out here. I say I want to be in the scale of D sharp minor. So every note that goes in that's not in the scale is corrected. So we have for each chord the right mode. So it's minor or major. So I'm having here basically a nice diatonic chord progression already just by using a simple note clip with a pattern, creating multiple notes from it, and then constraining it to a scale. And then here I have a note FX layer, so I'm splitting up basically these chords into 2 paths or 2 layers here. In the first layer, I'm transposing the chord up 1 octave, okay? And then I'm using the strum, and the strum uses then these multiple notes and plays it back like slightly delayed. When I disable this here, this lower layer here, you can hear how it sounds. So it's placed like delayed. When I disable this, I have just chords. Right? When I introduce strum, I get this nice slowly strumming playback of these piano chords. And I also can dial in here that basically I'm switching or toggling between strumming up or down. So first the high note, then until we get to the lower note, and vice versa. So up, down. You can also change the speed of the playback of the strumming. Okay, so what we do now is we automate this here in the on the clip itself. We say we want to start maybe a bit faster here, or this, and then a bit slower. Something like this. So we can also use here the quantize for this. So we're delaying some of these notes, and we can say just quantizes it a bit more so it's more rhythmically correct. So when I switch on here to metronome, or you can keep it completely free or unquantized. And then I'm using here at the end the randomize, so I'm randomizing a bit the velocity, so each note in the chord is a bit differently from the velocity, so it feels more organic and human. And then here in the bottom layer, I'm using note repeats without the transposition. So it's an octave lower, basically playing an Euclidean pattern. So this sounds like this. You can increase density here. So it's basically repeating the chords or the notes of the chords in an Euclidean pattern. Sounds like a bass rhythm. So when we disable everything, this is basically my initial note clip here. And this is painted within, I don't know, 2 seconds. And then I create this this whole device chain here, modifying all the keys and creating something like this. And of course, you can save this as a preset, this whole chain here. Maybe introduce here a chain device and then put all the stuff in here into this chain, right? Save it as a device, as a preset, and you can reuse it in your tracks. And also, yeah, you can add some macros here and change some stuff here with some macros or modulators, of course, and bring in more interesting variety. Maybe bring in more notes here. Something like this. why I think it's pretty interesting to create something like this in this way. It's a different approach, right? If you can't play the piano pretty well, then this is peanuts for you. But if you are some kind of nerd, musical nerd, like this approach, then this is valid too, and it's fun, and it's a different approach, and you get different results, and yeah, it's fun to do. Okay, so another example where I use note repeats probably a lot is bassline patterns. And bassline patterns are sometimes in electronic music pretty simple, but they need to be groovy, right? So what I'm using here is just a kick drum to get some feel for the rhythm. Let's go with this. And let's create some bass to it here. Let's go with the phase 4. Audio engine is crashing a lot, but it's beta stuff. We know this. So let's go with the bass note here. And I don't paint in a pattern for a reason, of course. And I'm using note repeats here in front. Euclidean mode, because I like it. You can already hear it. It's pretty groovy. Let's go to monophonic synth. So you have something like this. You can change the density. Also can do is maybe introduce here a transpose, no transpose, at the step mod, and maybe say at the end here I want to pitch it up by 5 semitones. Let's try this. Or maybe 32 steps. To bring in variation and change the density. Right, so you get a nice rhythm just by doing this. You can also use your hi-hats, E-hats, just using the same notes here because the pitch doesn't matter for the hi-hats. And also clone here this note repeats to the hi-hat. Maybe quantize. Not before it crashes. Okay, so let's try this. Nice. Also randomize the velocity here a bit. Maybe you can add here also the expressions. Use timbre for the decay length and try this in. You can add to So you can create easy Euclidean rhythms, or at least create some interesting groovy patterns pretty easily. Maybe go here with the, or we can also copy this over here for the clap, and then copy this over here. Density down. We need maybe only two of these. Let's see if this works. If you want to change the rhythm, you just go into this device, change the density, or you create some macros for your MIDI keyboard, and then you just, turn the knobs on the keyboard and change the rhythm pretty easily, and it's still in the grid. Right, pretty straight, or something like this. Oh, the rotation is basically where it starts, where you start with the first initial hit. So you can go with 0, so it starts exactly at the first kick, as you can see here. Or you delay it a bit, so it starts basically here. Or you can change also the length here, maybe go to 7 or 8. So you can create all kinds of different grooves, and if you think it's too straight, then bring in the humanization device or the randomization device, and you can, make it a bit more sloppy, or not so even, a bit more funky. So what do you think about the new device editions of Bitwig Studio 4.0? Tell me in the comments. I think they are pretty fantastic, and as you can see, I'm using the piano roll basically just as a sketching board, drawing in the rough information of pitch and position in the time frame of the project, and then using all these NodeFX devices to shifting and quantizing and offsetting and so on to create much richer results in the end. So that's it for this video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.